You were taught a lie about intelligence. They told you it was a number, a test score, a degree, a measure of how well you perform inside a classroom designed by someone else. That lie was convenient because real intelligence has nothing to do with sounding smart. It has everything to do with control. Control over your reactions, control over outcomes, control over how much of your life is shaped by your own will versus someone else's design. While most people were busy trying to appear intelligent, the truly intelligent were learning how power actually moves. And power does not move according to grades, morality, or good intentions. There is a hierarchy, a ladder most people never realize they are standing on. 7 levels of intelligence, 7 stages of awareness. This is not flattering, it is not comfortable, and once you see it, you will never see people the same way again. The only question is, where do you actually stand? The unaware. This is where most people live, and where most people die. The unaware is not stupid. That's the mistake. He may be educated, skilled, even admired. He might hold a respectable job, speak confidently, and function well inside routines. From the outside, he looks fine, but functionally, he has no agency. Life happens to him. He wakes up when the alarm tells him to, works where circumstances place him, believes what authority repeats, desires what advertising installs. He experiences these things as normal, never asking who designed them or why they benefit certain people more than others. He feels busy, stressed, and tired, yet strangely passive, always reacting, rarely choosing. He thinks he is making decisions, but his options were pre-selected long before he arrived. Career paths, acceptable opinions, approved ambitions, even rebellion, when it's allowed, is carefully packaged. Ask him why he believes what he believes, and you'll see the fracture. He doesn't reason. He recites. A headline, a teacher, a parent, a trend. Press a little harder, and the confidence collapses into irritation or silence. Not because he's malicious, but because his beliefs were never built, they were inherited. His mind is a rented space. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this type well. He observed that the simplest men are always the easiest to deceive because fear and necessity guide them more than thought. The unaware lives inside necessity, bills, approval, safety, routine. These forces narrow his vision until autonomy feels dangerous. He operates from an external locus of control. The economy did this. The system failed him. Bad luck ruined his plans. Other people held him back. Responsibility feels heavy, so he avoids it. Freedom terrifies him because freedom removes excuses. If he were truly free, he would have no one left to blame. So he seeks consensus. He checks what the majority thinks before he feels safe thinking it. He looks for validation before speaking. He follows trends not because he likes them, but because they signal belonging. His greatest fear is not being wrong. It's standing alone. These people are not villains. They are fuel. They power systems built by higher levels. They vote when told, consume what's pushed, obey what's framed as necessary, and quietly disappear. History doesn't remember them because history is built on them, not by them. If you're truly at this level, this video likely never reaches you. The algorithm doesn't reward content that threatens anesthesia. And if it does reach you, the discomfort you feel isn't depression, it isn't confusion, it isn't negativity. It's the moment the fog thins. It's reality leaking through sedation. And that moment is dangerous because the unaware who begins to wake up does not become wise overnight. Awakening alone does not make you intelligent. It creates something far more unstable and far more arrogant. The performer. The performer has realized something important. The world rewards signals of intelligence. So he begins to signal. He collects opinions the way others collect clothes, changing them depending on the room, the audience, the trend. He memorizes arguments without understanding their foundations. He quotes books he hasn't wrestled with, ideas he hasn't tested, philosophies he hasn't lived. Intelligence becomes a costume. He doesn't seek truth, he seeks recognition, approval from the people he wants to impress, membership in the intellectual class, the nods, the likes, the quiet confirmation that says, "You're one of the smart ones." This is the realm of moral signaling, credential worship, and intellectual aesthetics. He knows the right words, the correct outrage, the approved enemies. He speaks fluently in whatever ideology is fashionable, not because he believes deeply, but because belief has become a social currency. To him, intelligence is not something you do, it's something you display, and compared to the unaware, he feels superior. That's the trap, because while the unaware is asleep, the performer is dreaming and believes he is awake. He sees the fog and assumes he's above it, never realizing he's standing in a different layer of illusion. Challenge him with a novel problem, one that has no precedent, no template, no viral opinion to borrow. Ask him to build something from nothing. Ask him to act without a script, without consensus, without applause. He collapses, because the performer cannot create. He can only imitate. He is an echo chamber with a human face. Niccolò Machiavelli warned against mistaking the appearance of virtue for virtue itself. The same applies to intelligence. Looking intelligent is not the same as thinking independently. Sounding informed is not the same as understanding reality. The performer is especially vulnerable to ego inflation. He knows just enough to feel superior, but not enough to see his own limitations. This is why he becomes aggressive when questioned, defensive when challenged, hostile when exposed. His identity depends on never being revealed as shallow. If you feel a compulsive need to prove you are right, rather than to discover what actually works, you are here. If debates feel like battles for status instead of tools for understanding, you are here. If your confidence collapses the moment approval disappears, you are here, bright, loud, and powerless, because intelligence that requires applause is not intelligence. It's dependency dressed as intellect, and dependency always gives control to someone else. The performer believes he has escaped the herd. In reality, he has just joined a more sophisticated one. Real intelligence begins the moment you stop needing to be seen as intelligent and start caring about something far more dangerous. The strategist. This is where intelligence turns cold. The strategist no longer cares about approval. Applause feels childish to him now. Validation feels inefficient. What matters is outcomes, results, control over situations that once felt random. He studies incentives instead of morals, power structures instead of intentions, human weakness instead of human ideals. Rules stop looking sacred and start looking negotiable. This is the first level of real agency. The strategist understands that most systems don't reward honesty or effort. They reward alignment with incentives. He learns how organizations actually function, how people really make decisions, and how fear and desire quietly steer behavior. He knows when to speak and when silence is leverage, who to flatter and who flattery insults, who to bypass entirely, how to extract value while minimizing exposure. He doesn't work the hardest, he positions the smartest. From the outside, this looks like intelligence, and in many ways, it is. The strategist rises quickly. He gains money, influence, and access. He stops being naive. He stops being surprised. He stops being used. But this level has a cost few talk about. When everything becomes transactional, nothing feels safe. The strategist assumes everyone else is playing the same game, because if he's honest, he would be. Trust feels irrational. Vulnerability feels reckless. Every interaction becomes a calculation. What do they want? What do they know? What are they hiding? So he scans constantly. He reads tone, body language, timing. He anticipates betrayal before it happens, and sometimes he creates it by expecting it. Many high achievers die here. They have money, status, leverage, and no peace. They are always alert, always optimizing, always preparing for the next move. They win meetings, they win negotiations, they win arguments, but they never relax, because relaxation requires trust, and trust feels like a blind spot. The strategist is powerful, but trapped. He is winning inside a system he did not design, a game whose rules he understands, but cannot rewrite. He can climb the ladder, but he did not build the building. And deep down he knows that no matter how skilled he becomes, someone else controls the structure above him. This is the quiet frustration of level 3. You are no longer naive, but you are not free. You see the strings, yet you're still attached to them. You react faster, smarter, colder, but you are still reacting. Strategy sharpens the mind, but it also hardens it. And if nothing changes, the strategist eventually realizes a disturbing truth. Intelligence used only to survive a system eventually turns you into one of its components. To rise beyond this level, intelligence must stop being purely calculative and become something far more dangerous than cleverness. The executor. This is the realm of will. The executor stops optimizing quietly and starts moving reality. He no longer waits for perfect conditions or consensus. He understands that hesitation is often more dangerous than error. He decides, he acts, he absorbs consequences. While others calculate endlessly, he commits. This is leadership under pressure. Visibility, conflict, exposure. The executor stands where outcomes are decided, not discussed. He accepts responsibility that others quietly avoid, and because of that, power begins to cluster around him. People don't follow the executor because he manipulates them. They follow him because he brings order. In moments of uncertainty, humans instinctively gravitate toward the one willing to act decisively. The executor becomes a reference point, a stabilizing force in chaos. Machiavelli understood this burden well. He wrote that if one cannot be both loved and feared, fear is safer. The executor understands this not as cruelty, but as realism. He knows that leadership requires decisions that will disappoint, anger, and alienate. He does not seek approval, he accepts consequence. At this level, intelligence becomes generative. The executor doesn't just exploit opportunities, he creates them. He doesn't merely react to systems, he bends them through execution. Plans stop living on paper and start shaping the world, but visibility comes with a price. The executor's power depends on energy, presence, and stamina. He must show up, he must perform, he must be seen, and because of that, he becomes a target. If he weakens, he is attacked. If he hesitates, he is replaced. If he shows doubt, challenges circle. The executor carries everything, and eventually becomes enslaved by what he built. His identity fuses with his role. His sense of worth becomes tied to performance. He is always on, always responsible, always needed. From the outside, this looks like dominance. From the inside, it often feels like exhaustion. Many powerful leaders never rise beyond this level. They mistake force for freedom. They believe control comes from visibility, command, and presence. But the more they do, the more they must continue doing. Their empire demands constant feeding. They think they are kings. In reality, they are the highest paid servants of their own ambition. The executor believes power is about pushing harder, deciding faster, standing taller. He has not yet learned the most dangerous lesson of all, that the loudest power is rarely the most enduring. There exists a form of influence that doesn't require constant presence, a power that doesn't depend on stamina, fear, or command, a force that doesn't stand in front of the crowd but quietly determines where the crowd moves. And, compared to that power, even the executor is exposed. The influencer. The influencer has learned the inefficiency of force. Why command when you can suggest? Why confront when you can frame? Why stand in front when standing behind gives you control without resistance? This is power through psychology. The influencer understands that human behavior is not driven by logic, but by narratives, environment, and the twin engines of desire and fear. People don't need orders. They need stories that make obedience feel voluntary. So he stops pushing. He starts shaping. He alters the context instead of the person. He changes incentives, language, timing, and emotional framing until the outcome becomes inevitable. Everyone feels free, yet everyone moves exactly as intended. That is the elegance of this level. The influencer is rarely visible. He doesn't need to be. Visibility attracts opposition. Influence attracts compliance. He whispers where others shout. He guides hands without touching them. When things go wrong, his name is absent. When they go right, he benefits quietly. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this dynamic deeply. He noted that everyone sees what you appear to be, but very few ever experience who you truly are. The influencer lives by this principle. Appearance becomes a tool. Identity becomes flexible. He is whatever the moment requires. To one person, he is an ally. To another, a neutral observer. To a third, a trusted advisor. None of them realize they are being guided. This is soft power at its peak, persuasion without fingerprints. But this level extracts a different price. Identity begins to dissolve. When you wear masks long enough, you forget which one is yours. When every interaction is strategic, sincerity starts to feel inefficient. Connection becomes dangerous. Authenticity becomes a liability. The influencer grows powerful and hollow. He sees through people so well that he stops seeing with them. He predicts reactions, engineers outcomes, and optimizes behavior, but he rarely experiences anything directly. Life becomes a board. People become pieces. Meaning becomes optional. And despite all this sophistication, he is still playing the game, still reacting to incentives, still adapting to structures he did not create, still constrained by environments designed by someone else. The influencer believes he has escaped the trap of visibility, but he has not escaped dependency. His power depends on existing systems, existing desires, existing fears. Change the environment, and his influence weakens. Remove the audience, and the performance ends. This is the quiet limitation of level 5. Manipulation, no matter how subtle, still requires something to manipulate. And there exists a higher form of power, one that doesn't guide behavior person by person, but makes certain behaviors unavoidable by design, a form of dominance that doesn't whisper to players, but determines the rules they must play by. The architect. The architect no longer thinks in people. He thinks in systems. Individuals are variables. Structures are constants. While others obsess over influence, persuasion, and control at the human level, the architect asks a different question. What environment makes certain behaviors inevitable? Because once the environment is set, behavior follows automatically. He builds worlds people live inside without realizing they are inside them. Corporations, platforms, institutions, ideologies. These are not tools of influence. They are behavioral engines. They don't convince people one by one. They shape incentives so that millions move in predictable patterns, believing they are acting freely. While others fight for dominance inside the arena, the architect owns the arena. This is second-order intelligence, not reaction, but design, not tactics, but structure, not weeks or quarters, but decades and generations. The architect understands something most never grasp. Human behavior is downstream from systems. Change the reward structure, and morals follow. Change the environment, and values shift. You don't need to argue with people when you can quietly make certain choices profitable and others costly. History remembers these men, even if it doesn't always name them. Not the kings who fought the wars, but the designers who created the conditions that made those wars inevitable. Not the loud leaders, but the silent builders whose ideas outlived empires. This level is rare, painfully rare, because to reach it, you must abandon the desire for immediate validation. You must let go of applause, recognition, and even personal credit. The architect often works anonymously, knowing his influence will be felt long after his name is forgotten. But even here, there is a limit. The architect is still attached to legacy, attached to outcome, attached to whether the system works, survives, scales, or endures. His ego has not disappeared. It has simply been projected outward into structure. If the system collapses, he suffers. If it is corrupted, he feels betrayed. If it is dismantled, something inside him breaks. He still cares, and caring is a form of vulnerability. The architect believes he has transcended the game because he no longer plays within it. But in truth, he has only moved to a higher board. He is still invested, still identified, still bound to creation. This is the subtle ceiling of level 6. To design systems is powerful, but to be free from them requires something else entirely. There is one level beyond architecture, a state where intelligence is no longer expressed through building, shaping, or controlling anything external. A level where power does not come from creation, but from complete internal sovereignty. And compared to that state, even the architect is still holding on. The sovereign. This is not dominance. It is detachment. The sovereign no longer seeks control over people, systems, or outcomes. He has moved past the hunger that drives every lower level. He does not need to win arguments, command rooms, or leave monuments behind him. What defines him is not what he has, but what no longer has power over him. The sovereign needs nothing, and because he needs nothing, he fears nothing. You cannot threaten a man who has no attachment to status, approval, or survival narratives. You cannot bribe a man who desires nothing you possess. You cannot manipulate a man whose ego is no longer the control panel of his behavior. This is not nihilism. Nihilism is despair. This is clarity without desire. The sovereign sees the game clearly because he is no longer emotionally invested in its outcome. He understands power, influence, manipulation, systems, and psychology, but he is not enslaved by them. Where others cling, he moves lightly. Where others panic, he observes. He is unreadable, not because he hides, but because there is nothing to extract. No predictable reaction, no vanity to stroke, no fear to exploit. When people look at him, they project their own assumptions. He reflects whatever stands in front of him, like a mirror with no surface. This is why the sovereign is dangerous in a way no other level is. He can descend into any role without becoming trapped by it. He can act as a strategist in negotiation, an executor in crisis, an influencer in social dynamics, even an architect when systems must be built. But he does not live there. He enters roles as tools and exits without residue. He plays when necessary. He withdraws when not. Power over self replaces power over others. Control is internal, not external. His emotional state does not rise and fall with success or failure. Praise does not inflate him. Loss does not hollow him. He is stable in a way that cannot be engineered from the outside. This is the state Machiavelli hinted at, but never fully described, because it cannot be taught through rules or strategy. It emerges only when ambition burns itself out, when the need to be someone dissolves, when identity stops clinging to outcomes. The sovereign aligns his will with chaos itself. He does not fight uncertainty. He does not attempt to dominate fate. He moves with it, adapts to it, and uses it without resentment. Where others demand guarantees, he accepts volatility. Where others need certainty, he trusts his own equilibrium. This is the final inversion of intelligence. The lower levels seek power to feel safe. The sovereign is safe because he no longer seeks power. And paradoxically, this is where the greatest freedom and the greatest potential for action exists. Because the man who is not ruled by fear, desire, or identity is impossible to predict, impossible to corner, and impossible to enslave. He does not need to conquer the world. He has already conquered himself. Final mirror. So now the question turns inward. Where are you? Be honest. Not performative honesty, not the kind that sounds good in your head, but the kind that costs you something. Most people don't sit cleanly in one level. They oscillate, especially between level 2 and level 3, performance and strategy, smart enough to see the game exists, not free enough to stop playing it. You may signal intelligence in public while calculating privately. You may reject the herd while still craving its approval. You may understand incentives, yet still feel trapped by them. That tension you feel, that low-grade dissatisfaction, is not failure, it's fracture. Awareness is the first crack in the structure that held you. But understand this clearly. The system is not neutral. It is designed to keep you low. Education trains compliance before curiosity. It produces the unaware, obedient, credentialed, and dependent on external authority. Universities refine this into performance. They manufacture performers fluent in language, ideology, and theory, but disconnected from consequence. Corporations then absorb the strategists. They reward intelligence just enough to extract value, but never enough to allow escape. You are paid to optimize within boundaries you did not choose. Architects are rare. Sovereigns are almost non-existent, not because people lack intelligence, but because the ascent requires something most people will not surrender: comfort, validation, and the safety of belonging. You do not climb by adding more information. That is the lie sold to performers. You climb by removing illusion, the illusion that being right matters, the illusion that approval equals intelligence, the illusion that safety is the same as freedom. Each level demands subtraction: ego, dependency, identity, attachment, and most people turn back the moment the cost becomes personal. So look again, not at where you want to be, but at how you actually move through the world. What controls your reactions? What threatens your stability? What praise still hooks you? What fear still governs your decisions? That answer tells the truth faster than any label ever will. If this exposed something uncomfortable, write, "I see the hierarchy" in the comments. Subscribe to Iron Psyche for philosophy without anesthesia, because intelligence isn't about being right, it's about being free.